For most of the post-war era, Japan's navy was shaped by restraint more than by fear, not because danger was absent, but because distance once created time to assess, time to signal, time to wait. That logic defined how Japan built ships, trained crews, and wrote doctrine. The fleet was designed to endure pressure at the edge of conflict, not to intervene before pressure accumulated. It protected sea lanes, it guarded approaches, it avoided shaping events beyond Japan's immediate perimeter. China understood this posture well. Beijing never needed Japan to be weak, it only needed Japan to be predictable, a capable defender that would remain cautious, legally constrained, and reactive until circumstances became undeniable. That expectation allowed Chinese planners to treat Japan as a background condition rather than a driver of outcomes. The result is a navy no longer built around waiting, it is being built around operating inside pressure, not outside it. That distinction matters because modern naval conflict no longer rewards restraint the way it once did. Missile timelines are measured in minutes, surveillance is constant, movement is visible. The side that waits for clarity often finds that clarity arrives too late to matter. Japan has internalized that reality. The change did not begin with ships, it began with threat recognition. Japanese planners accepted that proximity, not intent, now defines danger in East Asia. Missiles from North Korea normalize overflight. Chinese naval patrols blur the line between presence and coercion. Russian forces operate closer to Japan's northern approaches while fighting a major war elsewhere. None of this requires declarations. It only requires persistence. Japan's geography offers no strategic depth. Its population centers sit close to the sea. Its economy depends on uninterrupted maritime flow. Its ability to delay involvement in a regional crisis has eroded quietly, long before doctrine caught up. Once that reality settled in, the old naval posture stopped making sense. China's naval rise is often framed in numbers, hull counts, tonnage, launch rates. Those numbers are real, and they favor Beijing heavily. Japan did not attempt to compete on that axis. Trying to match China ship for ship would drain resources without altering outcomes. Industrial asymmetry alone guarantees that any such race would be lost before it produced deterrence. Japan's response instead targets a different vulnerability: confidence. China's maritime strategy assumes that scale creates control. Large missile inventories, dense sensor networks, and massed platforms are meant to compress time and overwhelm coordination. That logic works best against opponents who rely on concentration and predictability. Japan has shifted away from both. The new Japanese Navy is structured around dispersion without isolation. Ships are designed to operate apart without becoming blind. Submarines are integrated into broader surveillance and strike networks rather than functioning as standalone hunters. Sensors matter as much as weapons because information now shapes survivability more than armor ever did. This creates a different problem for China. Instead of facing a few decisive targets, Chinese forces would face a field of smaller, harder to classify threats contributing to a shared operational picture. Eliminating one node does not collapse the system. Suppressing one sector does not blind the rest. This is not dominance, it is denial by persistence. China's advantage in missile volume still exists, but missile volume loses efficiency when targets refuse to behave predictably. A dispersed fleet forces wider coverage, heavier defensive allocation, and longer decision chains. That friction accumulates before the first shot is fired. Japan is not trying to win the opening exchange. It is trying to make the opening exchange less decisive. This is where most analyses stop, but this is where China's real problem begins. The most destabilizing element of Japan's naval transformation lies below the surface, where certainty collapses fastest. Japan's submarine force has always been quiet disciplined, and regionally optimized. What has changed is not their stealth, but their role inside a much larger system. These submarines are no longer positioned simply to hunt ships. They are positioned to interfere with movement itself. That distinction matters. In any major contingency, China's problem is not firepower, it is flow. Amphibious forces only work if transit remains predictable. Escorts must arrive on schedule. Fuel ships must keep pace. Command platforms must remain connected long enough to synchronize the opening phase. None of that survives prolonged uncertainty beneath the surface. This is where Japan's submarines begin to matter in a different way. Consider the transit problem alone. Moving large formations across contested waters requires planners to assume corridors are usable. Once Japanese submarines are factored in, those assumptions collapse. Routes that once looked efficient begin carrying unacceptable risk. Detours lengthen timelines. Staggered movement replaces mass. Each adjustment buys safety at the cost of time. Time is not neutral here. As anti-submarine demand increases, escort requirements inflate. More surface combatants are pulled into screening roles. Helicopters stay airborne longer. Sonar coverage tightens. That effort does not come from surplus. It comes from elsewhere in the plan. Ships assigned to submarine defense are ships not screening missile carriers. Air assets hunting underwater contacts are air assets not extending coverage forward. Logistics vessels slow or bunch up, increasing vulnerability instead of reducing it. The force remains intact, but its balance shifts under pressure. This is how tempo erodes without a single engagement. In a Taiwan scenario, the effect compounds quickly. The opening phase is supposed to be fast, controlled, and decisive. Japanese submarines turn it into something slower and noisier. Transit windows narrow. Synchronization degrades. Command decisions that depend on clean timing begin stacking uncertainty instead. Nothing dramatic has to happen for this to work. A single submarine does not stop an operation. Multiple submarines force caution. Caution stretches timelines. Stretched timelines expose dependencies. That exposure spreads. Once escorts thicken in one sector, coverage thins in another. Once movement slows at sea, pressure shifts to the air. Once the air picture becomes crowded, decision cycles lengthen. What begins as a subsurface problem migrates upward, outward, and forward through the entire plan. This is why Japan's submarines do not need to fire to exert influence. Their value lies in what planners must assume, not in what commanders can confirm. The mere possibility of presence forces allocation. Allocation forces trade-offs. Trade-offs consume time. At that point, hesitation stops being situational. It becomes systemic. This might sound manageable if viewed tactically. It isn't. Because once an operation begins paying for safety with time, it starts drifting out of its own assumptions. Windows close unevenly. Sequencing slips. Control weakens not through defeat, but through delay. And delay, in modern naval conflict, is not a pause. It is exposure. Above the surface, Japan's fleet no longer emphasizes singular power projection. It emphasizes survivability under saturation. Rather than concentrating capability in a small number of large destroyers, Japan is expanding the role of lower signature surface combatants that can operate closer to contested zones without drawing immediate priority targeting. These ships are not built to dominate, they are built to endure. Their value lies in sensor coverage, air defense contribution, and anti-submarine coordination. They extend the fleet's reach without concentrating risk. They complicate targeting by refusing to present clean, high-value formations. China's missile doctrine works best when targets are few, identifiable, and predictable. A fleet that distributes capability across multiple platforms undermines that efficiency without requiring interception parity. Survivability becomes strategic leverage when it denies an adversary clean solutions. Hardware alone does not explain the shift. The deeper change lies in permission. Before 2022, Japan's planning logic followed a rigid sequence. An attack had to occur. Attribution had to be confirmed. Political consensus had to form. Military response came last. That order slowed escalation, but it also surrendered initiative the moment warning times collapsed. That framework assumed time would exist. It doesn't anymore. Japan has now accepted that waiting for impact before responding is no longer compatible with survival in East Asia. The language remains careful and restrained, but the implication is operational. Counter-strike capability now exists inside Japan's legal and planning framework. This does not imply preemption. It implies interruption. Interruption breaks something planners rely on more than firepower: sequencing. Before 2022, escalation ladders were predictable. Pressure accumulated, responses arrived late but controlled. Adversaries shaped tempo by moving first and managing reactions. Japan's restraint made that model work. After 2022, that ladder fractures. Japan does not need to fire first. It only needs the right to fire early. That single change forces adversaries to account for Japanese action inside their own opening moves, not after them. Launch timelines compress, assumptions about sanctuary dissolve. What once felt like a safe phase of escalation no longer guarantees immunity. This unsettles planners because it injects uncertainty at the moment they need precision. Operations designed to remain limited now risk interference before they stabilize. Moves meant to intimidate now risk disruption before coordination solidifies. Speed, once a tool for control, becomes a liability that attracts early response. Legal permission matters more than hardware here. Weapons can exist without changing behavior. Authority changes planning instantly. Once a state accepts the right to interrupt rather than absorb, adversary timelines grow heavier. Clean sequencing becomes unreliable. Escalation control shifts from managing reactions to surviving interference. The danger for China is not defeat at sea. It is a war that starts fast and never becomes controllable. A war where acceleration widens participation instead of containing it. Japan hasn't made war more likely. It has made clean wars harder to plan. And for a strategy built on speed, sequencing, and early control, that may be the most destabilizing change of all. The most important change Japan has made is not about firepower, it is about time. For decades, China's regional strategy relied on creating decisive moments faster than rivals could respond, control the opening phase, shape perception, present fate's accomplice before coordination solidifies. Japan's naval transformation targets that logic directly. The new Japanese Navy is built on the assumption that the opening hours of a conflict are no longer survivable for forces that wait. Missiles travel faster than diplomacy. Sensors reveal movement long before intentions are clarified. Hesitation no longer buys clarity. Japan has reorganized its maritime posture to compress its own decision timelines, while expanding uncertainty for its adversary. From China's perspective, that is deeply destabilizing. All of this would matter less if Japan were acting alone. It isn't. Japan's limitations remain real. China's numerical advantage persists. Its industrial capacity continues to expand. Its missile inventory grows faster than Japan's defenses can scale. Japan still depends heavily on US integration to operate at full effectiveness. These constraints matter because they prevent illusion. Japan is not preparing to dominate the Western Pacific. It is preparing to deny China a clean fight. That distinction keeps expectations grounded and strategy disciplined. The goal is not victory through force alone, it is deterrence through complication. Japan's new navy does not announce itself loudly. There are no dramatic unveilings, no declarations of intent, no theatrical shifts. The changes appear incremental, technical, almost bureaucratic. That is precisely why they matter. China does not face a single shift it can counter cleanly. It faces a gradual narrowing of favorable conditions. Every year, assumptions weaken. Every update adds friction. Every exercise tightens coordination. The environment changes without spectacle. And when war planning depends on control, environments matter more than rhetoric. Japan has not overturned the balance of power, it has altered the balance of risk. The seas China once expected to dominate quickly are becoming spaces where outcomes unfold more slowly and less predictably. Speed now creates exposure. Momentum attracts attention. Certainty dissolves earlier than planned. For a strategy built on compression and control, that is deeply destabilizing, not because Japan is preparing for war, but because it is preparing for a future where waiting is no longer survivable. At this stage, Japan's transformation stops being about ships, missiles, or doctrine. It becomes about constraint. China's regional strategy has always depended on one advantage above all others: the ability to control escalation faster than opponents can coordinate a response, move quickly, create facts, force decisions before alliances fully activate. Japan is quietly removing that margin by shortening its decision timelines, preparing to operate under missile pressure rather than outside it, and integrating its naval forces deeply into allied sensing, targeting, and defense networks. Japan changes how early a crisis becomes crowded. Delay becomes dangerous. Separation becomes unreliable. Control becomes conditional. None of this guarantees Japanese intervention in any specific scenario. That is not the point. What it guarantees is uncertainty. For China, uncertainty is not a background condition. It is a strategic contaminant. It stretches planning horizons. It forces wider force allocations. It raises the probability that early moves trigger broader involvement rather than intimidation. Operations that depend on speed now risk exposure. Operations that rely on sequencing now risk interference. Operations designed to stay limited now risk escalation before control is established. That is a profound shift, and it happens without spectacle. Japan does not announce a new era. It does not abandon restraint publicly. It does not declare dominance, redraw red lines, or threaten preemption. There are no dramatic speeches or symbolic gestures. What exists instead is preparation. Preparation for a battle space where missiles arrive before deployment, where surveillance removes ambiguity, where waiting no longer buys clarity, only vulnerability. This is what makes the shift so difficult to counter. China can still build ships faster, it can still expand its missile inventory, it can still increase pressure along the region's edges. What it can no longer do with confidence is assume that speed alone guarantees control. And once that assumption breaks, every plan becomes heavier, every timeline stretches, every move carries more risk than before. Japan does not need to outrun China, it only needs to make China doubt that speed still produces dominance. Because once that doubt enters war planning, it does not fade with reassurance. It does not disappear with deterrent statements. It does not reset between crises. It stays. And in modern naval competition, a strategy that cannot rely on speed is a strategy that must accept friction. That is the quiet change Japan has introduced. Not a shift in balance, a shift in risk. And for a power built on control and momentum, that may be the most dangerous change of all.